Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and it's yet another Fun Ideas podcast. And today I have on the show with me Mr. Benny Biffle. I told you I'd forget your name. No.
All right.
No, Mr. Nick Santamaria. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you, Mr. Arnold?
I'm doing well, too.
Yeah.
So I found out from your Facebook page that you're doing an Abbott and Costello book. Now, is it out or is it delayed, or what's the story on that one? Because it seemed like it was going to be out last year and it's still not out. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, COVID got in the way of it being released last year.
Okay.
And then this year, we submitted the book, completely finished, beginning of this year. And Matthew Coniam, my co-author, warned me, since he's worked with McFarland Press before. He says they're very slow, they're very methodical, but this is slower than most, and it's not coming out now until November of 2022. So it'll be fall this year, close to winter. And I just hope people enjoy it. I hope it was worth the wait.
Okay. I mean, for some reason I thought it was already out, and then I was looking to order it, and it said November 5th, 2022 on Amazon, and I said, oh, well.
We woke up to news that we were number one. We were number one today in interest in comedy, books about comedy. We were number one.
Now, I'm going to do this a little differently, because usually I ask all your life story, but I've heard other podcasts, and you kind of did that on other podcasts. But if we get into it, we get into it. But I was kind of curious about the Abbott and Costello story because, like you said on other ones, they're kind of like the low men on the totem pole. It's like Three Stooges, everybody seems to know. Then it's like Laurel and Hardy. And then even like Martin and Lewis, Cheech and Chong, and then you kind of get through, Chris Farley and David Spade. And then you finally get to like Abbott and Costello. It's like they were like under the also rans.
Biffle and Schuster.
Exactly.
No, the truth of the matter is the main reason we wrote the book, and I speak for Matthew also when I say this, we prefer Abbott and Costello to Laurel and Hardy. Me, a slightly smaller margin than Matthew, because I love Laurel and Hardy. But my New York clock, I grew up in the tri-state area, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. We grew up with Abbott and Costello every Sunday morning. And I was exposed to all of these guys. But I have to tell you, from the early age, Laurel and Hardy were just like a snail pace. It was the slowest comedy. Everything was so methodical and set up, and you knew what the gag was going to be. And I didn't know then what they were doing.
That was the point, though.
Exactly. As I got older, I realized what the pacing problems were, that it was television. These things were built for movie theater audiences. So they did move slowly. You wanted to leave room for the laughs. But it was just so deadly slow for me. I wanted the Stooges, I wanted Abbott and Costello, I wanted the Marx Brothers. All these guys were running around on my New York time clock. You know what I mean? So so we grew up really loving the films of Abbott and Costello. I know some Abbott and Costello fans say, "Oh no, it's the television show. I just like the television show." Sorry, I'm not a big fan of the television show. I think it's kind of slipshod. It looks like they threw it together. And for the first season, that was great. It was a lot of fun. The second season, I can't even get through. I prefer their Colgate Comedy Hour shows when they're working live. That's when you really see them come alive. But the movies have gotten, outside of a few, critically ignored. When people are talking seriously about comedians, they seldom come up. Even back in the day, comedians like Jack Benny and Milton Berle and people like that would make jokes about them because they didn't really respect them. They thought they were lazy. They thought they were taking routines that were older than they were and, making it their own and blah, 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 blah. My point is, I have to say that nobody did those routines better. They were preserved for all time, whereas they would have disappeared completely. And just try to watch somebody else do Who's on First or 7 times 13 or any great routines, and it should tell you how great they are. And it's not just the routines. Lou was a great actor. Lou could have been as big as any of the silent movie comedians, any of the great silent movie comedians. He was that good a physical comedian, as well as being a great verbal comedian. Bud was probably the greatest straight man in history, at least recorded history. And although I don't think Bud was always necessary to the team, I know that sounds blasphemous, but in some of the movies, his part could have been played by anybody, any good, fast-talking actor. But Lou, Lou could carry a picture on his own. He was that good. He was that good. Watch him. He's just brilliant.
Of course, he did one on his own, so I guess the 50-foot bride I can't.
Oh yeah, I mean,
rock, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you could watch Little Giant or Time of Their Lives, and you see a great comedian working on that in front of that camera. You see a great comedian,
right?
Yeah, and as well as a great actor. So, and here's my point. Here's my point. When I say great actor, I want to back this up. When you watch Who's on First, voted the greatest comedy routine of all time. When you watch Who's on First, think of the premise. It's the most ridiculously contrived premise on earth. There are actually ball players by the name of Who and What and I don't know and Tomorrow, and it's the most ridiculous premise. You believe it every time. Because they put as much commitment into it as Olivier did Hamlet and Brando did Stanley Kowalski. They're acting it, and you believe every word. Right. So there you go.
And I agree with that. It's like on anything, like I don't know if you've seen Father Ted, British TV series, but there's one episode where, and this is kind of like in a Who's on First vein, there's one episode where there's this little piece of black tape stuck on the window.
Right.
And it's just there to set up what happens later. And I won't spoil it for people who haven't seen it. Just watch Father Ted. But it's the same premise as Who's on First. It's like it wouldn't make any sense unless Bud says, "Oh, all these baseball players have nicknames, funny names, stuff like that." If he didn't say that line, you're right. It's like the skit would fall flat. It's like, what is Lou an idiot? Well, he is sometimes.
Well, he is an idiot.
But it's like the skit would fall flat if it didn't have that basic premise, which you're right. It didn't necessarily make sense. I mean, there were some Dizzy Dean, I guess, so they did threw those out there, but it wasn't really predominant in baseball as much as he acted like. So, especially when they did the skit originally by the 40s and stuff, it's like, I guess later on they had Catfish Hunter or something, but anyway.
From what I understand, when they went to England to play the Palladium, England didn't know baseball. So they had to restructure it. And from what Chris Costello tells me, they used the orchestra members.
Oh, okay.
Now, strange as it may seem, they give musicians nowadays funny names. For instance, the tuba player is who, whatever. And they worked it that way, and it worked.
I thought they might switch it to cricket or something. I don't know.
Actually, no, because the rules wouldn't apply. It just didn't work.
Now, didn't Abbott and Costello, I'm a little brain dead tonight, didn't Abbott and Costello do like variations on that theme also along the way that weren't quite as good, but they were still like Who's on First type things? I know they did a lot of verbal interplay, but were they trying to recapture the Who's on First thing? And it's like everything else, lightning only strikes the bottle once, no,
that's a good question. That's a good question. Basically, no. What they did was, and their modus operandi is the fact that it's based on vaudeville immigrant humor. That's where Abbott and Costello come from. Originally minstrel shows, people, what's the word I'm looking for? Mistaking certain words for other words, not understanding what the straight man is saying, turning it into a big routine. That was all minstrel shows in the mid 1800s. This is what Abbott and Costello was doing in the 1940s. This is why other comedians were saying, what are they doing? These guys are the most popular comedians in the world right now. And they're doing routines I saw when I was a kid, from other people. So basically what they did was they took the immigrant thing that was happening in vaudeville, usually the Germans, was you there, Charlie? Oh, this must be the praise. It was all based on immigration, on immigrants not understanding the rules. So Abbott and Costello were they grew out of that arrangement. Dumb guy, smart guy, the guy who knows everything and maybe wants to get a little extra out of the dumb guy, and the dumb guy being so dumb that he outwits the smart guy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You
Makes sense.
know what I mean? So it's very based in that.
Mm-hmm.
You look frozen.
Yeah, you look
I
frozen.
don't have
No,
to
you
pay
come
Disney
back.
for
So
the thing I do.
if we just keep going
Oh.
here, if I have to edit something out, I'll do it later. Anyway, and if you really freeze
Yeah.
out, well, you'll jump out and come back in. I've seen it happen before, but it's like usually my connection's pretty good. But anyway,
I'm gonna jump out and come back. Yeah.
I know you mentioned, and I have to say this just because you're already in hot water on Three Stooges. Maybe it's like, yeah.
Sorry.
Don't
Yes.
take the cut the subject out. No, you say that Curly Howard of Three Stooges is only good for about like a film and a half. I mean,
I'm sorry.
Curly's not my favorite either. He's actually my second favorite. I like Shemp much better. But
I'm more of a Shemp fan too.
yeah, so but and I had an argument with somebody once. It's like, well, Shemp wasn't the original one. And I go, yeah, he was actually.
Oh, yes, he was.
Anyway.
Do your homework, pal.
Yeah, we used to have arguments, but some people really like Curly. But what I wanted to say about Curly, not really how you said a comment this is about him, but more that you watch Three Stooges enough, you watch Abbott and Costello enough. They do similar routines. So there's like the one with the clam in the bowl, and Costello or Curly is like trying to open it up and squirts in his face and stuff like that.
The oyster stew. Yeah.
And then what was the other one that they always do? Well, Niagara Falls. It seems like everybody does Niagara Falls, and it's like
everybody does Niagara Falls.
So
yeah, even Betty Biffle.
So are there? I mean, obviously they weren't copyrighted because I don't think there are any lawsuits about this. I know Mo Howard was a little bit disgruntled that he thought, Costello was stealing from Curly, and of course Costello was kind of upset.
He's so
that,
full of it. Can I just dispel that rumor right now?
Sure.
Okay, forget that. Everyone who's listening right now, forget that. It's bull. Like most of Mo's book is bull. First of all, Lou Costello got into burlesque in 1929 before Curly was a member of the Three Stooges. There's no way. Is Curly, let me put it this way, Lou got there first. And I have to tell you, his reviews from 1929, his very first year, were glowing. He had it from the very beginning. So Mo Howard, I'm poking your eyes. There you go, Mo. Start telling the truth, Mo. Oh, yeah.
I'll switch it to you because this is kind of a lead into one of the many things you do. You're a film historian teacher. You teach film comedy history, and it's called For the Love of Comedy History. You can explain that, but also when did it happen in your life that it went from I'm just enjoying these films to I can say a few things about this and I'm a knowledgeable scholar about them. Maybe you don't.
I'm an obsessive moron. Basically, wait, the first question, was, what was it again?
Talk about your For the Love of Comedy History course.
Okay, my class it's called For the Love of Laughter, and it's only one of my classes. Right now I'm teaching a class called Murder, Mayhem, and Monsters, the golden age of the horror film. I teach one about the history of the musical film. I teach one about the history of TV variety. I teach one about live television comedy from the 50s. I teach a lot of courses via Zoom, just like this. I was doing it in person when I lived in Los Angeles, but now things have changed and I'm home. So I love teaching. I love it more than anything. I like writing too. I've been a performer it's going on 48 years. And I find teaching much more satisfying than performing. It's amazing. It's so much fun. I love sharing this stuff with people. And the other thing, your other question, how did this become an obsession with me?
Yeah, more than just basically watching this for entertainment value or not.
Well, there's actually it's kind of a family story. When I was very, very young, I felt I was the third son. So like Groucho felt with Minnie, often neglected, not especially appreciated, feeling a little unloved. And so I would hear my parents downstairs in the kitchen when they would have friends over. And they were all contemporaries, all around the same age. And they always found themselves talking about the movies they loved when they were young, and especially the comedies, because they would laugh and they'd talk about scenes they remembered, when they met Eddie Cantor and this and that. And I would listen. I would sit upstairs and I'd listen. And I realized that was my key. That was my way in to being more appreciated by my parents, basically. So it was like a family thing with me. It was actually quite planned out. It was quite premeditated, but it got out of hand because I felt like, oh, I have to know everything about this. I have to learn everything. And it turns out that it backfired on me because they looked at me like I was a freak at that point. My father called my bedroom the morgue because of all the pictures I had of dead comedians everywhere.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it became crazy. I read everything I can get my hands on. I watched everything I can get my hands on. And slowly but surely, I became this walking encyclopedia. It's weird. And my whole life, I heard, oh, all that useless information in your head. It's not useless. I'm using it. In fact, I'm making my living on it, you know?
Well, so it's the same with me. I mean, I write books, not necessarily about comedians, but comic books, animation, music, and other things. So, but the only reason I don't
satisfying thing.
Yeah, the only reason I don't touch like subjects like Abbott and Costello, it's not like I couldn't. It's just that there's other people doing it, and it's like I don't really want to go into a field where everybody else, because some of these people, I hate to say, not yourself, but they're like, didn't you do your research? Or, it's like, but if I'm navigating and doing original research, it's like there's nothing much to compare to, And sometimes people be like the Mo Howard situation, like you said. They'll say, didn't you know Mo Howard said this? And it turns out to be false. And you're getting into the arguments about it. Whereas you're maneuvering something kind of unique, you can kind of call your own shots somewhat. But I'm not adverse. Exactly. I'm not adverse to doing it, but it's like, I like that the fact that you're doing that. Otherwise, somewhere along the line, I'd probably do an Abbott and Costello book. So
you know what it is? You know what it is, Mark? I find that with Abbott and Costello, the last truly great book about them was done in the mid '90s. By Bob Furmanek and Palumbo, Ron Palumbo.
I don't even know if I have. I'll show you the ones I have.
Okay, show me what you have.
These are the ones that made me a fan. Even though I really only saw things like Frankenstein and maybe a couple others, because they didn't show them that often on TV when I was a kid.
Really?
My dad would talk about them, and it wasn't until the video age where they kind of made it nice and easy, where they put like eight films on a DVD set and stuff like that, where it's like, then I became obsessive that way. It's like, I want Rio Rita. It's not on this set. I want Dance With Me, Henry. It's not on this set. So I had to get all of them, So anyway,
do you know how many copies of Abbott and Costello and Frankenstein I have? Because it's in every Frankenstein collection, every Dracula collection, every Wolfman collection. And I have all of those,
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so I must have about 7. But show me the books you have.
I think I have 2 copies. I have the Abbott and Costello collection, and then when the Blu-ray came out of Meet Frankenstein,
I had to have the Blu-ray.
I got the Blu-ray. So anyway, so this is the old
Jim
classic.
Mulholland.
Yeah.
Jim Mulholland.
And it came out in a yellow paperback that was smaller.
Yeah.
I have the same book. I had the yellow paperback first. I still have it, but I couldn't dig it out today. Yeah. I figured it's the same book. But
that's a very good book. Very good book.
And so this is the one that said, wow, they did a lot of films. I didn't know they did this many, because the way they talk about it, to the novice fan, they did Who's on First, Buck Privates, Frankenstein, and a TV show. And that's about it. And it's like, then you find out, wow, they did like 30 films or more. They did more than Elvis. It's like, whoa, that was a lot of films, So,
but it's interesting along those lines, not to interrupt, but I am. Matthew Conium writes in his intro to our book, he said that after he finished his book, The Annotated Marx Brothers, I'm giving a plug for him. It's an excellent book.
Yeah.
He loves Abbott and Costello, just as almost as much as he does the Marx Brothers, and he wanted to do the same treatment for Abbott and Costello, but he was too lazy to do all 38 films. So he thought, who could I get in touch with that I could split them up? So we're each doing like 19 films each. You know what I mean? So yeah. Anyway.
Well,
So,
they do have a lot more films than the Marx Brothers. I mean, if you're being generous, I
oh
think
God,
they have
three times as many.
13 films and then a TV special, and maybe if you want to count Story of
Mm-hmm.
Mankind or something, um, I don't know,
Oh,
but yeah, there's
ouch.
one person could pretty easily tackle it. Strangely enough, there's far more Marx Brothers books. I don't know if that's the reason, because or it might be because Groucho wrote a few books, Harpo wrote a book, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So, and
Yeah.
fortunately, Groucho had the good sense to live longer than most of these other people. So,
Yeah, the good sense too. Yeah.
you know,
Uh,
um,
I loved two things about Groucho. Number one, in the Marx Brothers scrapbook,
mhm.
one of the chapters opens with him saying, "Oh, I was just visiting Jimmy Durante. Boy, I told his wife, you better start praying because this guy's not going to live very long." And then later on, he met Charlie Chaplin. When Charlie Chaplin came to, no, this was earlier, and Chaplin kept telling him, "Stay warm, Groucho, stay warm." The funny thing is, they both outlived him.
Right,
Groucho,
right.
Groucho died before either one of them. You
Yep,
know,
yep, yep.
and I was kind of happy about that when it came to Durante, because that was a terrible thing to say to
Mhm.
anybody.
Yeah.
Oh, your husband's not going to be around very long, Mr. Tact. Yeah. So, what other books do you have?
Okay, so the other one, this one's actually amazingly hard to find. The one everybody
Ooh.
has is Why a Duck. It seems like that you can find anywhere. The Groucho Marx one, or the Marx Brothers one. This is the Who's on First one. I mean, you see a little piece out up here and stuff like that. It's taking me ever
I've
to
got it.
find this. Yeah, but
I like the forward by Carol Burnett.
yeah, yeah.
I like it. It's good.
And I wish he did a second one, just because he did more than one on Marx Brothers and he did more than one on W.C. Fields, I believe. And, but he got involved
Yes.
in doing other photo novels of other movies and stuff. I know where,
Yeah.
he had to go where the money went. So,
Alien,
yeah.
Alien and stuff. Yeah, yeah.
So, and then silly thing, videotape destroyed those type of books. But I love this type of book where you can, to this day, I love poring over the pictures because,
Oh, sure.
you can freeze frame it on your TV, of course, but it's more fun to
Yeah.
just like, oh, hey, I noticed, oh, here's Shemp, it's like, or something like that,
The lemon bit.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so those are
So, are
the
those
two
the
I
two
have.
books you have?
Yeah, so I don't know how many more. I was
Okay.
trying to look on Amazon and I didn't see any others, so I don't know if,
Well, I'm not sure if Bob Furmanek's and Ron Colombo's book is still available. I know it's been out of print for
well, these are out of print,
years.
so
It, it's an amazing it's an amazing book, an amazing book. When I first was approached to do this Abbott and Costello book, the first thing I thought was, we're never going to top that book. But I got news for you. I think we're pretty close. I think we're pretty close. I think it's a good book. I really do.
And that leads to another question. Obviously, you can't interview either of them, but somewhere in your lifetime, did you meet Bud Abbott or possibly Lou Costello, or no?
I wish I could say I did, but I didn't.
Okay.
I was born, actually, Lou died March 3rd, 1959.
Mm-hmm.
I was born March 31st, 1959.
Wow.
So when people see me as Benny Biffle, they're always thinking, I wonder if he was reincarnated as you. And right. Yeah, I'm just another Italian comedian. But no, and Bud passed away when I was 15. So I lived on the East Coast. There was no way to get there. It was an awkward time for me. I wanted to meet Groucho too, but I was too young, when he passed away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I missed a few people. I met a lot of people, met a lot of good people, but not that. I wish I could.
I do remember when Abbott died, but I didn't know much about it. And then in that aforementioned Richard and Noble book, he said he did talk to him, and then he had a fall or a stroke or something, and unfortunately never talked to him again. But the classic part before is like, why do you want to do this book? Who cares? Basically.
Yeah.
Essentially what he's saying.
It's like Zeppo.
It's like, if somebody cares, you got two people here that care, But I get it. It wouldn't be Bud Abbott if he wasn't a bit of a curmudgeon. So it's like,
certainly, yeah. Strange as it may seem, they give curmudgeons crazy names. Nicknames, yeah.
So, what do you think of the one?
Anyway,
I'm sure you've heard this over the years. The Credibility Gap's take on it, where they use rock groups in place of the ball players.
Yeah. The first people to do that actually was SCTV. They did Abbott and Costello hosting the Midnight Special, the rock and roll
Oh
show
yeah,
that used to be on every
yeah,
Friday night.
yeah,
And they did the whole thing with Yes and the Who and that whole thing.
yeah,
And that was the first time I ever heard that. But that was years ago. That was
yeah,
years
yeah.
ago. Mhm. Funny stuff. I love the one that Johnny Carson did about
Oh
Reagan,
yeah, yeah,
and Yasser.
yeah.
It was funny. It was very
I,
funny stuff.
yeah,
I have
my
some
favorite part
friends
on that one
who,
is where he holds up the phone and goes, "Mr. Reagan, Mr. President, who's on the phone?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know who's on the phone."
well, well, why are you asking me? Yeah,
So
that was a very funny version of it. Very funny.
it worked. I
And
forgot
I
about
have
that one
friends
until you
that
said
prefer
that.
those versions. I have
Mhm.
friends that prefer those versions because the setup is less contrived. You know what I mean? You actually can believe these things rather than people named who and I don't know and whatever.
Right.
But nobody gives it what Abbott and Costello give it, and that's
Yeah.
what sells it, and that's the beauty of it. But anyway, yeah.
There's one version of Who's
So
on
yeah, get
First.
ready for a new.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. What were you going to say?
I was going to say there's one version of Who's on First, and of course they did. I don't know how many times did they perform that to your knowledge?
Oh, it must have been at least 10,000 times,
Yeah,
and it was never done the same way. It's
no.
never done the same way twice.
But there's
That's
one
what I love
version
about
that
it.
they tend to play more, but I think it's a radio version or something like that because it's not in the
Mhm.
didn't they do it in the movies three times? They did like Naughty 90s
The Naughty
and
90s is my favorite. I
yeah,
think
that's
that's
the
the
best
best version.
film version, but it's didn't they do it in two other of their films too or something like that? I can't remember which ones.
Actually, they only did Who's on First one time before that, and it was an abridged version in their very first film, One
Okay,
Night in
that's
the
what I was thinking of.
Tropics.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, and it ends abruptly. It ends quickly,
Yeah.
and then the full version is in Naughty 90s, 1945.
Hmm.
And you actually hear the cameraman laughing if you listen closely. I'm
I'll,
serious.
I'll have to check that out again. Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I guess I
Yeah.
figured they wouldn't care because in a movie theater, the audience is laughing, so it'd cover up
Oh,
any,
sure.
you know.
And they
And
got tired of retaking it because it's like how many times can you do it?
right,
But
right.
they used to mix it up. They try to throw each other off. It's fun watching. When they were on the Steve Allen show, the very last time they recorded that routine in 1956,
Hmm.
they're playing with each other. They're trying to throw each other off. It's the last time they're doing it.
Hmm.
You gotta love that.
Now,
You
did
just
they
gotta love it.
know it was last time? I mean, I know that the word is, and then you can clarify if this is wrong, that Bud
Mhm.
wanted to retire and Costello wanted to work solo. But is that really correct, or did it just kind of drift
I
apart?
Bud could not. Bud needed the money. Bud was broke at this
Okay.
point. The government took everything from him. Lou was already paying them back, and he died solvent.
Hmm. I didn't know
Bud,
that.
yeah. Well, they took his house. They took
Yeah.
a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So.
so he was definitely depleted, but he was not broke, and he was doing okay. But Bud, on the other hand, lived longer. Lived 15 years longer, and had to live on Social Security, help from his kids. That he had a nice little house in Woodland Hills. But no, Bud wanted to keep working.
Hmm.
But he was 9 years older than Lou. He had slowed down to the point where he was slurring his words. He was
Hmm.
drinking too much. He had epilepsy, and that caused him. Yeah, see, you were drinking too much just now. He had epilepsy, and he would drink because he was so afraid of having a fit. He would drink himself to sleep every night. And unfortunately, one night when they were doing a show in Vegas, uh, in between shows, the 8 o'clock show and the midnight show, he went and he started gambling. And they start feeding you drinks when you're gambling.
Hmm.
And by the time the midnight show came, he was so drunk that he left Lou looking like an idiot out there.
Ah.
And Lou said, "After this gig, we're done. We're done. I'm going my own way. You go your own way." Blah blah blah. It was not. Oh well, Bud wants to retire. Da da da.
Yeah.
Bud couldn't retire. He
Yeah.
couldn't
That's too
retire.
bad.
But Lou was the ambitious one. He was the engine of the team. He made all the decisions, um, and he was ready to move on. He saw the writing on the wall. They
Yeah.
couldn't do any more than they've done. You know, so it was time for something else. It was time for something new. And unfortunately, he didn't have the time to develop what I know he could have done.
Yeah.
But if you've ever seen his that episode of Wagon Train that he plays a serious role.
Hmm.
He's terrific. He's
Yeah,
just terrific.
I haven't seen it. It's just I seen the photo in the book, so it shows,
Mhm. Yeah.
but that's about it. And it shows him laying on the ground, so that's a more dramatic part. I haven't even seen the Bud Abbott one. He's on some General
Yeah.
Electric theater or something, and it's like I haven't
He
seen that one
plays
either.
he plays he plays a supporting part. He plays the manager of a very nasty comedian played by Lee Marvin. And he's quite good. I catch him reading off cue cards during his big scenes, but hey, so did Marlon Brando. Uh, can you imagine? Marlon Brando, Bud Abbott as Stanley Kowalski. It's like Costello, Costello. Anyway, that's a Tennessee Williams joke. But I hope it gets more laughs out there. Uh, but anyway,
it's the crew around me. They're all laughing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
the crew. But anyway, so that was the breakup. Lou had pretty much had enough. He wanted to move on and do other things. Bud was also very hesitant about learning new material. He always, it's like, why can't we just do the old stuff? Why can't we just do the old stuff? Their new the review they were playing in Vegas was filled with new stuff and topical stuff, but Bud didn't want to learn it. He just didn't want to learn it. He was an old man, you know. He was an old man. And he'd been in the business for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
Lou knew it was
Interesting though that he was older and then he outlived him beyond that.
And he outlived
quite
by
a few
15
years. It wasn't like a couple years later. It was many, many years. And it's like, wow.
They were not a healthy
Yeah.
team. Bud had epilepsy and Lou had a rheumatic heart. He had rheumatic fever.
Okay.
And that's pretty much what killed him.
So he was pretty much destined to have a short life, even if he lost weight, which I think he kind of did shortly before.
He would go back and forth because he would get sick. With rheumatic fever, there's nothing you can do but lay down in bed. That's it. And for months. I'm talking about for months. So he would lose weight. He'd stop eating and he would lose weight, and he'd come back and you could tell he was sick. You could tell he was very ill. Yeah. Anyway, well, he was not a healthy guy.
Well, how did they churn out so many films and TV shows and stuff? Or did they just do a bunch of films and then he was sick for a period of time, and then do a bunch of films? How did they manage the breakneck pace? Because I mean, it's not like every day people do 3 or 4 films a year today. I mean, it's been done. Like Robin Williams did a few years where he's doing like multiple films, but it takes its toll. I mean, most people do maybe a film a year or a film every other year. It's like,
And Lou especially worked himself to death. I mean, he kills himself in these movies or the TV shows, and especially the live TV shows, the Colgate shows. He's sweating like a pig. He's throwing himself around the stage. He's dancing. I mean, seriously, literally killing himself to make us laugh. But the movies, he would, it was a kind of a Hollywood joke. I remember Milton Berle saying in 1941, he said, "Things are slow in Hollywood today." What was it? No, "Things are slow in Hollywood. Abbott and Costello haven't made a movie all day." So it was sort of a joke. Universal saw what they had. Buck Privates was made for less than $400,000, which is nothing. It made over 4 million. That was astronomical at the time. It went not only through the roof, but into the stratosphere. In the Navy, their next film made even more money. Universal knew what they had, and they worked them to death. They worked at the very beginning. They were making 4 movies a year.
Right.
And the way they worked, first of all, I envied them because I kind of work the same way when I do a project. They get the gist of what they have to do. They look at the script once before they shoot, and then they just wing it because they know these things. They know what they're going to say. They know what they're going to do. And Lou would ad-lib like crazy. So the directors soon learned that you had 3 cameras. You had your close-up camera, your medium camera, and a camera on Lou, because you don't want to miss anything. And when he got sick, he took a year off, right when they were at their hottest. And that's when his baby boy was growing up. They kind of learned to walk again together. They learned to walk. And and when he finally was well enough to go do his radio show, that's when his boy got out of the crib by the pool and fell in and drowned.
Right.
He ended up doing that show anyway because he wanted his boy to hear his voice no matter where he was. Well, that's just a horrible, horribly sad story.
Right.
Horrible.
How many kids did he have?
Well, counting Butch, there were 4. He had 3 girls. 2 girls before Butch, and then Chris later on. Chris was the baby.
Okay. Okay. Because I don't know much about their families. I don't even. Did Bud Abbott have any children?
They adopted 2.
Oh, adopted.
Bud Jr. Bud Jr. and Vicky. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Bud is gone. Bud Jr. is gone.
Yeah.
He died a long time ago.
Okay. All right.
And I know Chris and Patty. Chris and Patty are his 2 surviving children, the two girls, and they're friends. They're good people.
Okay. So did they talk to you? Did any of these people talk to you in the course of making the book to get like maybe photos or any recollections or anything? Or
actually, photo-wise, no. I have a dear friend by the name of Rick Green, who just came out with a book about Martin and Lewis, in fact. And he supplied every single one of the posters for the films that we're discussing. So that's going to be like on the top of every page is going to be one of his photos. And then my writing partner, Matthew, had a friend who had rights to a bunch of other photos. So there's going to be probably 2 photos to every film chapter.
Oh, very cool.
But the girls, we quote Chris from her book, but I didn't really contact her because I didn't have anything to ask, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Because I mean, you're basically reviewing the films, right, and annotating them. So, but
and we have the time codes to what we're talking about. We put the time codes with the DVDs, so you can go right to that place to see what we're talking about. And whatchamacallit, I got to talk to Gigi Peru, who was in Dance With Me, and she talked to me about working with Lou. I quoted Beverly Washburn, who worked with Lou on the Wagon Train episode.
Right. That's what I was trying to think of, but I couldn't think of her name.
Yeah, Beverly Washburn.
Sorry, Beverly. I met her before, but it's just like I said, my brain today is a little foggy. But we're gonna make it through. I'll just say for the sake of it, just to get it on posterity, I got my 4th COVID shot, and every time I get it, it makes me a little brain foggy, and it's like and I don't remember names, and I hope that's not a precursor for the future, because normally I can remember things, and it's like anyway.
Come on, Dave.
Who are you? Okay. Oh, I know. Remember you were Benny Biffle.
Just call me Murray. Benny Biffle.
Okay. I will actually, since I did that as a joke at the beginning, a lot of people might not know about Biffle and Schuster, and so that's another thing that you did for a bit of a time. Unfortunately, Will Ryan, who played Sam Schuster, is no longer with us. But tell me what it was like making those films. I saw them when you were on Stu Showstack's show. That was like the first time I kind of saw.
That was a crazy interview.
Yes, it was. And then I think that's when I found out about you. I knew about Will a long time ago because he did cartoon voices and things like that. But and I think I'm friends with
I was always proud of the fact.
Michael Schlesinger too. Michael Schlesinger too. So
who will be at the Columbus Film Festival with me, introducing Ryder Finkelstein. But these movies, let me tell you the story real quick.
Okay.
Basically, on Facebook, Will Ryan and I decided to create a comedy team, a fake comedy team from the 1930s and 40s, Biffle and Schuster. Now, when we created it, this was back around 2009 to 10, around there. And we didn't do much with it. We did a few live appearances, and that was about it. Well, down the road, about 2011, 12, Will and I decided to get together and do some publicity pictures as Biffle and Schuster. We didn't have any projects coming or anything. We just wanted some publicity pictures. So we went to a friend of his, a photographer, and we posed for some pictures. There was one picture of us bursting through a frame, a picture frame, wearing hats. And I posted that picture on Facebook. Michael Schlesinger, a friend of mine, a dear friend, got in touch and said, "Oh, it's a frame up," right? As a joke. And I wrote, "Hey, that sounds like a two-reeler title. It sounds like a short film title. It's a frame up." And he wrote, "Well, why don't you write one?" And so I wrote a
Wow.
synopsis where Bithell and Schuster, it's a frame up. They have to deliver a very expensive painting to a society house that is in the middle of having a society party. And of course, havoc occurs. And he said, well, you know what? He goes, I'm really thinking about doing this, but that would be way too expensive. Let me take a crack at it. So he wrote a version of It's a Frame Up as a two-reeler. And about a month later, we were in the studio filming.
Wow.
Now, Joe Dante was there to give us his blessings and be there just to say how great he thought this was. And right away, I thought, wow, this is going to be special. And it was. We were old time comedians. My fantasy of all fantasies came true.
Yeah.
And so we finished that one. And about 4 years later, he wrote about 4 more shorts or 5 more shorts, and we shot all of those at Remit Studios in Canoga Park. We had the best time. It was 5 weeks of shooting. The whole thing, I think, ran about $350,000 all told.
Oh.
And this was all out of Michael Schlesinger's pocket. And he wrote, produced, directed. Of course, Will and I added our ad libs and all, our special places. And we just had the time of our lives. We were living out a fantasy. And to be honest with you, Will, I know I'm speaking for Will as well. We would have done this for the rest of our lives if we could. It was that much fun. And in almost 50 years of performing, that was the most fun and the most satisfaction we've ever had.
Wow.
So I always thank Michael Schlesinger for that opportunity. It
Yeah.
was amazing. Yeah.
Well, I just like how authentic it is. I mean, if you didn't know any better, I mean, obviously I do, but it's like you would think it was from back then, just a nice pristine print of a long lost comedy duo, from the 30s or 40s, like you said, the only thing I can kind of compare it to, just because it came to mind, is like that silent movie, The Artist, that won Best Picture. They did a very good job.
Of
recreating a silent movie, better than Mel Brooks doing a silent movie, even though I like that one.
Oh, that was
yeah.
I worked for Mel for 5 years. I
really?
can say that.
Okay, where did you?
Yeah.
What did you work with him on? I don't.
Oh,
The producers. That's right.
Producers.
Brain.
I was
well, I was thinking films, and I'm going through my head.
I was in the film too.
But the later one, not the '68 one.
I was in the bad one.
Yeah, the bad.
I was in the lousy one.
Well, Mel didn't direct it, but yeah, I get it.
No, and you should have seen how depressed he looked on the set.
Oh,
he'd sit there like this.
Yeah. Well, it's really tough to remake. It's really tough to remake a classic. Like if you're remaking Dracula Dead and loving it, you probably improve upon it. So it's like there you go.
I think if you unspooled it in the street, it would be an improvement.
Bithell and Schuster meet Dracula. There you go. It's like, anyway,
that would be fun. But I'm not a big fan of Mel's movies. I'm really not. To me, they're like overlong Carol Burnett sketches.
Interesting.
They'd be funny if they were 10
then they have Harvey Korman in them.
And they have Harvey Korman. But seriously, if those movies were 10 minutes, they would be perfect.
Interesting.
So, just the way I feel.
I like roughly half of his films. It's the earlier half, of course. It's
so
like
you turn it off at midway.
Well, you kind of, you could kind of do that on History of the World Part 1. But anyway,
actually,
that is actually the last one I really like. I know everybody loves Spaceballs, but it's like after Hardware Wars, which was a short film and very well done. You can't top that on a Star Wars parody. And it's like Mel tried, but you can tell
he was a little late.
Yeah, he's a little late, but also I could tell he didn't have any feel or love for the material. I mean, I'm sure Mel grew up with Westerns. I'm sure he grew up with horror movies with Frankenstein and the Dracula
That's
one.
That's what he grew up on.
Yeah, the only reason the Dracula one didn't work, he was trying to make it modern. He did it in color. He tried to make it like the Coppola one, and he had Leslie Nielsen, who is the comedian of the day, which other than Airplane, it's really, and maybe One of the Naked Guns, it's a really strain watching him try to mug for the camera. It's like, Leslie, you're better as a serious actor trying not to be funny. That's when he was funny. But anyway. So I forgot about that. Yeah, you did work for the producers. See, I have little notes here, and like I said, I
Oh,
have a
you
little
have
brain
notes, do
fog here.
you?
Yeah, yeah. Um, Going back to the book for a
Yeah.
minute, just because I'm just jumping around, but I like the book. I want the book. Where is it? Where's my copy? Anyway,
It's coming. It's coming.
I know. You got the great director John Landis to do the foreword, and I met him. He did a talk in San Francisco a few years back, and he was just wonderful and just talked about all the films and everything. So did you
I
meet him,
love
or
his
did you
spirit.
just contact him through the emails and everything?
He was actually a buddy of Matthew Koenig, so my writing
Oh,
partner. And when he suggested John, I thought, yeah, when I finally contacted John Landis and introduced myself, and we wrote back and forth a few times, I reminded him that I saw Animal House and paid to see it 11 times,
wow.
and he freaked out. He was like, "Oh my God!" He goes, "What are you in therapy? Are you?" But seriously, I paid to see it 11 times. That's how much I loved that movie. To me, it was like my generation's A Night at the Opera. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Well, it's an
It's like
excellent
the
movie. It
guys.
was. I have to say this since I'm a few years younger, and I'll say a couple things to allude to other things. You said you were born the day of after Abbott,
Like, no, about three
Costello.
weeks after.
3 weeks
3
after.
weeks.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so I was born the same day Walt Disney died, which means nothing. It's
Oh,
just
1966.
yeah. So I'm a
1966.
few years younger, but
Okay,
the other
not much.
thing, as far as now, what did you just say? I just kind of lost it already, but there's some other connection. What did you just say? Repeat it. I'm like
Just
losing my mind.
now?
Yeah,
Oh, I said 1966. That's when Walt died.
right.
Um, and I said, you're what, 7 years younger than I am,
Yeah, but there
correct?
was something you said right before that. That's what I was trying to remember, and
Uh,
it's like it was a coincidence
uh,
for that. Darn it.
3. I said I died.
Oh, I know. Wait,
Yeah.
no. Okay, John. Oh,
Well, these
Animal
are
House.
old people
Animal
talking
House.
on.
We're talking about Animal House.
Yes,
Okay. All right. Sorry.
11 times.
Told you my brain fog tonight. This is fun to get it on camera. Me having brain farts, because
Having a stroke.
yeah, you won't have this every time on the show. Usually, I'm a little more sharp. But anyway, so I am living currently. I am living currently in Springfield, Oregon, which
Illinois?
is Oregon.
Oh, Oregon.
So this is
I love Oregon.
Matt Groening has said that this is the Springfield that The Simpsons. Prior to this,
Oh.
I lived in Eugene a few years back, and that's where they
Mhm.
shot majority of Animal House. And
That's
so,
right. Yeah.
and I was going to
Mhm.
say, you said this is what triggered it, and this is what it was. You said you saw it 11 times, paid for it 11 times. I can't say I did that, but it was the very first R-rated movie that I ever saw in the theater. And
Wow.
my mom took me, and
So you were like 14.
I was 12. I was already a Lampoon
Wow.
fan because
Mhm.
I was already a Lampoon fan, and of course I've seen nudity and stuff like that. But honest to God, I didn't know that you could have nudity in anything other than an X-rated film, because I just had never seen R-rated films unless they were on TV and they're cut to death. So it's like,
Right.
um,
And
when
pan
the
and
scene
scan.
so the scene with Belushi where he's like peering through the window and all the
Oh.
women are all the women are like hitting each other with pillows and everything like that. Oh man. And my mom was like, "Oh
Mhm.
my God."
Mhm.
I was insatiable after that. It's like I want to see only R-rated films. Let's go. And so
From now on.
here's a Mel Brooks thing that's funny. So a few months later, maybe it was even a month or two, because of cashing in on Animal House, they reissued Blazing
Mhm.
Saddles and Young Frankenstein together. I had not seen either
Mhm.
of them. Blazing Saddles is rated R, so I was like, oh boy, nudity.
An R-rated movie.
There's no nudity in that film. And I go, why is it
No.
R-rated? And it's like, now I know, but I was like, duh, it's like
The horses are not wearing clothing, I have to say.
yes, yeah, well,
Okay,
I
just so you
wasn't
know.
as a 12-year-old, I wasn't really craving horses. Maybe now, but so anyway,
Uh,
but the
yeah.
cool thing about living here, I originally grew up in California, but the cool thing about living here is you get to see all the sites. You can't see the Delta House, it's been torn down, but you can still see all the what are those called, dormitories that the women use, the other guys
Yeah.
use, and everything. Those are still extant. There's a town called Cottage Grove that's like 10 miles south. That's where they did
Cottage
the
Grove.
parade. That's where they did the parade.
It's
And then
also where Buster Keaton shot the most expensive shot ever in a silent film.
Oh yeah, he did the general there, and I didn't know that until I went
The
there.
train.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
you know how people say I was today years old when I found this out. So it was like 5 years ago, but I was today years old when I found out Buster Keaton shot the general in Oregon, because
Yeah,
I thought he shot it in Atlanta or something. I didn't know, or
that
Los
is true.
Angeles. I didn't know. You know. So
Yeah.
anyway, and then I've been to the insane asylum up in Salem, and that's where they shot One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So it's like it's lots of
Hmm.
film things up here. But one more Animal
Wow.
House thing. So I was going to go to the Dexter's nightclub, the bar, right before COVID
Hmm.
hit.
Yo.
And then COVID hit and you couldn't go anywhere.
Right.
So I finally went about a month ago and took some photos. So you'll see them if you go on my Facebook page. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, and I think I wrote, what's his name? I can't even think of it. Otis, he loves us, you know. Yeah. So,
Otis Day and the
you know,
Nights.
you know. And then the other line
The
I love
Negro
from
stole our dates.
that line, and the other line I like is, if I was in your shoes, I'd be leaving. What a great idea.
Great idea.
I mean, so many great lines in that movie.
Oh God. Oh,
So I'm
I
sure,
just love.
I'm sure they all saw Abbott and Costello, not just John Landis. I'm sure Belushi was a Costello fan. I think didn't he do Costello once on like SNL way back when in the day. I think he
He
did it
might have.
once. I think
He
he did
might have.
once, you know, and they did a little black
Yeah.
and white
Yeah.
bit, you know, and
Yeah.
but you know, I don't remember that. I'd have to look it up, but anyway.
There, you know who did the best Lou Costello ever was the late great Tony Rosato from
Oh yeah, yeah,
SCTV.
yeah. I thought you were gonna
Did
say
the best
Buddy
Lou
Hackett.
Costello. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my. Oh my.
You know what I'd like?
Strawberry ice cream. Oh.
Oh,
I was
that's
sitting
one
with.
thing. Do you listen
I
to?
was sitting with. Oh, go
What?
ahead. I'm sorry.
Have you
No, I
listened
was
to
sitting.
the? Okay, you talk. You talk. Okay.
I was just going to say that what you call it. We were. You know what? I don't remember what I was going to say. So you go ahead.
Okay. Have you listened to any of the late Gilbert Gottfried's
Yeah, a few.
podcast? I didn't know if you were ever on it.
Yeah,
I don't think you were, but
I wasn't on. No,
yeah.
no, he didn't live
But
long
you know,
enough.
he would always have little memorable lines. He'd do old Groucho and says, "Because Chico needed the money." He'd always say that, and that's kind of become a catchphrase. But the one he
Yeah.
would do is the ending of that Bud and Lou film, which is cringeworthy, where Buddy Hackett's with Harvey Korman is Bud Abbott, and
But
you know he
yeah.
says that thing about chocolate sundae or something to that effect. You
the
know, and
strawberry,
it's
the strawberry
yeah.
milkshake.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the best I ever tasted, or something. And you're like, ooh, you know, I watched that on TV originally, long before I saw many Abbott and Costello films, and I go, what the hell is this?
Oh my God. Oh my God. What an introduction. I was in college and I was cast in the lead in The Lion in Winter, big drama. I played King Henry II.
Wow.
And we were having our dress rehearsal the night that movie was on. And I begged my director. I said, "Can we please? I know this role. Please have someone fill in for me. I want to see this movie." She said, "No, there's no way. You've got to do the show." Blah blah blah. I brought a portable black and white television, plugged it in backstage, and every time I went off stage, I turned it on and I started watching Bud and Lou. Of course, I got nothing out of it because watching it under those circumstances was impossible. So when they repeated it and I finally got to see it, I thought to myself, I wish I'd never seen that film. What a horrible, horrible film.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes along with Bob Thomas's book, Bud and Lou, which is also quite scurrilous.
Yeah.
And
forgot about that book. I don't have that book either.
Guy.
So it's like, if they're too far afield on these things, like Three Stooges, I have a lot of their books, but I don't have all of their books because there's a few that are stinkers.
Oh,
yeah.
So the Stooges only had one fair shake when it comes to books. Otherwise, I always was a little embarrassed by the books that came out about them. They were always a little shoddy,
Yeah.
Not really good 4-star, books. But then one came out called One Fine Stooge.
Oh,
and
the Larry Fine one. Yes, that is
mostly about Larry.
Yeah.
And that's an excellent book.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the truth, that and there's a book by my good friend Bill Cassara called about Ted Healy, Nobody's Stooge,
Oh yeah.
and it's excellent. It's
Oh,
just excellent. If you're a Stooge fan out there and you want to know the real story, get this book.
okay.
Get this
I
book.
don't have that one. I do have the Vernon Dent one, it's like
Yeah,
that's a pretty good
I've
book.
got that
It's not
one.
the best book, but it's
I've got
what
the Edgar Kennedy one. Yeah,
um
yeah. He's a good writer.
I mean, I would say the best Three Stooges one, and it's just because probably my age when it came out, and I just loved it, is the first version of the Three Stooges scrapbook, that came out
Yeah,
in the early
yeah.
80s, because I was just poring over it because back then there's no internet. So, and I didn't know, I didn't know, like, I remember when Moe and Larry died in 1975, and the articles both did not mention what happened to any of the other Stooges except for Curly. And so I was saying, is Shemp still alive? What's going on? And then I kind of figured out Joe Besser was still alive because he'd done cartoon voices and things like that. But I didn't know anything about Joe
Mhm.
Dorita, and it's like, well, and when did they stop making Stooges? Because then I started seeing like the Snow White and the Three Stooges and things like that. And I go, well, obviously they made movies later like that, which are
Mhm.
kind of scary, but okay, they at
That
least
was
did a,
boy,
it,
that was quite one to point out, to
yeah,
speak
at
out.
least they made color
Probably
film,
the worst thing.
and it's like,
Yeah,
but it's like, I didn't even know about things like Coop's Tour and stuff. Of course, I have it all now, but back in the
oh, I
day,
do, sure.
yeah, but it's again like Abbott and Costello. It's like I didn't know how I was going to see all these. So how did you see all of them? Just on TV, and you just marked your TV guide in the old days, or did you manage to get them in the theater, or what?
Oh no, no. There was when I was growing up, we had three local stations in New York. One was Channel 5, Channel 9, and Channel 11.
Hmm.
And Channel 9 had the Abbott and Costello movies when I was really young. And every Saturday afternoon at 10 a.m., they'd have an Abbott and Costello movie, and then another one at 2 p.m. So there was an entire year that I did not go out on Saturdays. I watched
Wow.
Abbott and Costello
Okay.
movies. I was obsessed. I loved them.
Wow.
But then Channel 11 got the package. They attained the rights to it, and every Sunday morning, and ask anybody who grew up when I did in New York, every Sunday morning at 11:30 till 1 o'clock was the Abbott and Costello movie.
Hmm.
So I saw every single one of them either there or CBS had the MGMs, and they would show those, Lost in a Harem and
Right.
Abbott and Costello and Hollywood Rio Rita. So yeah, I got to see all of them. And 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock used to show up all the time on
Yeah.
ABC,
Yeah.
Channel 7. The only one I did that didn't show up a lot, but they showed up later on, was It Ain't Hay
Hmm.
and Dance with Me, Heaven. I didn't
Hmm.
see until later.
Hmm.
So yeah, those were the only two. Otherwise, yeah, they were always around. I always had Abbott and Costello. And when I was a kid, I'd go out and play. It wasn't, let's play Army or let's play boat. It was let's play Abbott and Costello on a boat, or let's play Abbott and
Wow.
Costello in the Army, whatever. Yeah, I'm not kidding.
Huh.
I was obsessed. So
Huh.
this book is a
Interesting.
labor of love. Mhm.
Interesting. Yeah. See, it was my story. My dad, who's still around, he's 84 now, but he grew up with Abbott and Costello. So he'd see them all in the
Mhm.
theater. And so he'd
Yeah.
rave about all these things. And but unlike, like, since they weren't silent movie stars, I couldn't see a lot of stuff. Like, they'd show silent movies in the pizza parlors and stuff. So that's why I saw old R gangs and
Shakey's? Shakey's
Yeah,
Pizza?
yeah. And Straw Hat. There was another one that
Straw
did the
Hat
same
Pizza?
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
Uh-huh.
show old R gangs. They'd show Chaplin. They'd show old Laurel and Hardy, but they tended to show the
Mhm.
silence because you could have them playing in the background with a bunch of screaming
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah,
Uh,
but
yeah.
Castle Films had silent Abbott and Costello movies. I used to
Oh,
collect those.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, I never collected 8 millimeter. That always was like, it's insane now. You look at an old 8 millimeter catalog and it's like you get a 7-minute film for like, and then they were charging like $100 for them. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
and now
It
you
was
can get
insane.
8 films for less than $20.
But we
8
were
feature films.
desperate. We were desperate. These were
Yeah.
like, this was gold to us.
Yeah.
There was this one thing. I'm also a monster kid. I grew up with the monsters, the Universal monsters and all that. I'm a fanatic still.
Yeah.
We had a thing, I forget the name of it, Monster Scope. And it was this round plastic thing, like a cylinder, that you would place these pictures of from the monster movies, and you place them in these slots, and there were hundreds of them. Take you forever. And then you could turn the thing and you would see movement. from the
Wow.
parts. And if you
Huh.
turned it around, you saw the other side. So it was the creature on one side and the Wolfman on the other, or Dracula on one side and Frankenstein on the other. It lasted literally 45 seconds, 30 seconds,
Wow.
and we were thrilled to have it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's
I
what it
was the
is.
same way.
Or
They had
DVDs.
this little thing called the Fisher Price movie projector, and those little plastic yellow
Yeah.
things. You shove it in the back, and of course, after you ran it about 100 times, then it broke, and you'd have to. But what I did is I pried them open, and I learned basic film editing. And I spliced the films together out of those cases and
Very
stuff.
good.
But anyway, but
Yeah.
nowadays, it's like, wow, you can get everything on Blu-ray or streaming or whatever. But
Everything's available.
so I think the last one I ever got to see is, because I think they're the Warner Brothers ones, is the Warner Archives. I never saw Captain Kidd for the longest time, and I always saw really awful versions of Jack and the Beanstalk, because
Those
I think
prints
that
are
went to
horrible.
public domain or something like that, and I finally got a
Both of
nice
them.
one. Yeah. Well, the other one was in a
Yeah.
nice print on the Warner Archive, but yeah, I never saw it on
Yeah.
TV or anything.
Well, actually, I'm not sure if Captain Kidd is public domain. I know Jack and the Beanstalk
It
is. I don't
is.
think
That one
Captain Kidd.
definitely is. Yeah. I don't know about the
Yeah,
other one.
yeah.
I think the other
But they're
public
restoring it
domain
now.
is Africa Screams. That one's always
Right.
the public domain one,
One of maybe my least favorite Abbott and Costello movies. But whatchamacallit, Jack and the Beanstalk's being restored right now by Bob Furmanek,
Oh,
and it
very
looks
good.
gorgeous. It'll be out in July. It
Yeah.
looks
And there's
beautiful.
moments in that film. I mean, yes, it's a kiddie film, but I liked it as a kid.
Oh, it's
And it's like,
cute. It's cute.
so I mean, it's kind of like
When
Laurel
we
and
were
Hardy with
kids,
yeah.
when that came on, when Jack and the Beanstalk came on, it was just as exciting as when The Wizard of Oz was on.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it does the same
And
thing.
not
Yeah.
just me, I'm talking
Yeah.
about my family.
Yeah.
Like,
Black and
whoa,
white to
okay.
color and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I get it. So you mentioned your worst or least favorite. Probably is it Africa Screams?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if that's my least favorite, but I think it's probably one of the MGM ones for me. But your favorite?
Mhm.
What's your favorite?
Ooh, I would have to say Abbott and Costello, Me Frankenstein.
Wow. Okay.
It's
All right. Well, I mean, that's
with
not surprising. It's but I thought, you see them all. Like everybody, that's like the go-to answer, because they don't show them all the time, and that's the
I
most
hate to say it because it's so cliche,
yeah.
but we have in the back of our book, we have a selection of very, very qualified people to give us their favorites, their 10 favorite Abbott Costello movies. I mean, Leonard Maltin, Joe Adamson, a lot of different, Joe Dante, a lot of different people. But yeah, I think that Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is as near perfect a movie as you can get. I don't see any faults in it at all. It moves beautifully. Let me tell you a quick story. I used to be a comedian on the cruise ships for about 3 years. And I know. And on one of the ships, there was an all Korean crew, right? I mean, in the bowels of the ship. And I brought a videotape of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. And I got them to the ship, allowed me to take over the movie theater on the ship at midnight. And I invited all the Korean crew. You never heard such laughs, and they didn't understand a word of it. You never heard such laughter. It was wonderful. And they were so happy after just coming up and shaking my hand. Thank you. So, it's like Laurel and Hardy get all the press, but sorry.
Yeah.
I compare them also in my book, in the book. I talk about, I compare Stan Laurel to Lou Costello, and I just think he's more limited. He plays that one character beautifully, but he wouldn't have made it at all if it weren't for Ollie. Everybody talks about how, Ollie was so lucky to have Stan. Stan did all the work and blah, blah. No, Stan was a failed silent comedian. He was getting out of the business. He was going to direct.
I didn't know that, but I did know he wasn't doing very well.
And Ollie came along, and he became a star, basically. So, I think, and then again, just like Abbott and Costello, I think Oliver Hardy could carry a movie, or at least be a great character actor.
Yeah.
Stan, on the other hand, I always say, I think if they split up in 1938 like they were supposed to after Blockheads, I think Ollie would have become a really great character actor, and I think Stan would have become a director or a gag man, maybe at Columbia, for Jules White or whatever, like Charlie Chase did.
Yeah,
But
and
I don't think he would have
Buster
been,
Keaton did that for a
and
while too.
Keaton
Yeah, yeah,
as well, and Harry Langdon. But I don't think Stan would have been a star comedian.
yeah. Do you think that might be why? Also, he's getting up in years that he didn't want to do a cameo in "It's a Mad, Mad, Mad,
Yeah,
Mad World." Do you think that might be the reason
yeah.
why? Because he didn't have Babe with him and stuff. So
I think he was very loyal to Babe, and he
yeah,
was very loyal to their image. And I don't
yeah,
think he wanted anyone to see him as he was
yeah.
at the time. He was sick. He was an ill man. He was sick.
That's true.
You know.
That's true. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think he even went to the Oscar ceremony. There's like small film of him holding his Oscar in his apartment or something like that.
Yeah, later. That was
Yeah,
taken later. Yeah, he
yeah,
won the SAG award, Lifetime SAG award too. They had to bring it to his apartment. So yeah, he couldn't get around. He couldn't get around. But you know, he was wonderful. Bless him. I love Stan. I love Ollie. I love. But my heart is a little
Is Abbott and
closer to
Costello
Abbott and
what you fell
Costello.
in love with first? I mean, for me, it's Three Stooges, but it's like for you, was it that was the clincher that you wanted to like all comedy, or you just were like open to everything and whatever you saw?
I have to say that as a child, I mean, I always tell people that I was about 5 years old when I first saw Lou Costello. And that's when I fell in love with comedy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I knew what I was going to be. I made my decision then and there. And I always knew what I was going to be, always, thanks to Lou Costello. Um, but, you know, my brothers, I had two older brothers. We used to get up every morning, and the first person to get to the head of the stairs got to choose what stooge he was for the day, you know? And we all wanted Curly,
Dorita,
you know, and
Dorita,
the loser,
Dorita. Oh, sorry.
the loser was always Larry. The last one was
Aw,
always Larry.
I like Larry.
No,
Anyway,
but I've gained an appreciation for
yeah,
Larry since then.
yeah.
Believe me, I think he's great. But the Stooges were very, very big with me. Laurel and Hardy a little later on because I thought
Yeah.
they were too slow. Abbott and Costello, I was in love with the Marx Brothers. I was obsessed with the Marx Brothers.
Now that one took me longer to get into. I think,
Yeah,
now I love them, but at the time, but it might be my dad, because my dad, he saw everything in the theater. And you got to remember, when he saw Marx Brothers, he saw them in the 40s. He didn't see
right. He didn't see
the
the
good
stuff.
stuff, and even if
Yeah,
they reissued it, he still just
yeah.
thought they were kind of manic, and he never really liked manic comedians that didn't have much substance. He tended to like Groucho on You Bet Your Life, things like that. He
He
thought
he did or
he
didn't?
did. Yeah, he liked that
Yeah.
because Groucho could just shine and just say things that were kind of funny instead of. I don't think he was a big Harpo or Chico fan, and I think that's probably the reason why. It's like, give me
Well,
Groucho.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
they're 2/3 of the equation, you know.
yeah,
But there was something about them, especially when I was growing up. It was all about Groucho. I mean, I loved Harpo and Chico equally well, but Groucho was still alive,
yeah.
so I felt closer. Now that I'm older, I realize that as I rewatch the films, Groucho stuff hasn't aged very well.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll agree.
Verbal jokes age. Verbal jokes. How many times can you hear a
Yeah,
verbal joke and
yeah.
still laugh at it? Right.
Mhm.
Harpo, on the other hand, has become my favorite Marx Brother. Even when you're in the theater and Chico and Groucho's, lame puns or the jokes they're doing, when they fall flat,
Mhm.
Harpo is they're laughing like it was made yesterday.
Mhm.
So I have to say it's Harpo that has lived on with modern audiences more so
So in
than
saying
Groucho or
that,
Chico.
what is your opinion of Love Happy?
Oh, it's funny you should say that. I don't know if you read my wife's review, my new wife. I was showing her the Marx Brothers movie she'd never seen, and she wrote a little review on each one. And we kind of agree on Love Happy. We're both Harpo fans.
Hmm.
So Love Happy to me, I think is a delightful experience. He's
Yeah,
wonderful in it,
yeah.
and he's very funny in it. It's got some great Frank Tashlin gags. Chico's funny in it. Even Groucho, his small amount of stuff is good. I think it gets a bad reputation. I like it.
Well, I think it's because
certainly like it better than Go West.
Groucho started the bad reputation. He dismissed it as garbage
Oh yeah, yeah.
right away, and it's like, but I've always said this after analyzing their films: Love Happy is good if you like Harpo. If you like Groucho best, you don't like Love
Yeah,
Happy, and it
you're
boils
right.
down to that. Because
It's Harpo.
that was probably the first one I ever saw, and it's like, and there's a book by Kevin Collier Smith, I think is his name, about Love Happy. It's a really slim book. It's cheap too, but It has like
Oh, I didn't
lots of
know about that.
stills. Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's pretty cheap.
Oh,
It's
I'm gonna check it out.
yeah,
I'm gonna check it
and
out.
I bought it because I said, "Wow, somebody devoting only to this film that everybody generally regards as awful," But it's like
Mhm.
I like
Well, I
it.
have a full book. I have a full book published by McFarlane about Atoll K.
Oh wow.
It's all about Laurel and Hardy's last film.
Hmm.
Everything you want
That
to
one I don't
know.
have, so I'd be
Yeah.
interested in that because I like the weird flops as much as the hits. But I can
You
tell you my
know, with
favorites. It's like
Gus,
so on Marx Brothers, my favorite is still Duck Soup. It's like it just has to be. Um, but
Dinosaur Stuff.
you probably won't guess, and I've been wanting to have you guess. But you'll go through 37 guesses and then you get to it. What my favorite Abbott and Costello one is. It's not
Uh,
Frankenstein, so I'll give you that. Even though I
okay,
like that,
okay.
that's a good one. It's not my favorite.
Most people say when it's not Frankenstein that it's either Hold That Ghost or Buck Privates.
I like Buck Privates Go Home better than Buck Privates, but it's neither of those either. Or
Oh,
Buck.
okay. Uh,
I'll give you a hint. Part of the reason I like
One
it
Night in the Tropics.
no.
No.
Part of the reason I like it is because the lady that's in it teamed up with like every other comedian, including the Marx Brothers. So
Martha
that'll
Ray and Keep 'Em Flying.
not Martha Ray. No.
No, Joan. No, it's
No,
not
no,
Joan
no. Oh,
Davis.
come on. You know who she is. She's in a lot of Marx Brothers films. That'll be the hint. But she was with W.C.
Okay.
Fields and she was
Oh,
with
Margaret Dumont.
yes.
Margaret Dumont.
So which
She's
film
Little
is it?
Giant.
Yeah, that's my
Little
favorite one.
Giant.
After watching since I got the
Unbelievable. I love.
DVDs of all of them and I got to watch them. I wasn't lazy like your British counterpart. I actually watched all of them. And I
To
said,
tell you, you said that by the way.
yeah, and I want
Yeah.
to ask about him in a second, but I want to ask about him. No, anyway, the reason why I like that one, part of it, the reason is Margaret Dumont, because I just love her in other things. And I said, she's got to be the luckiest lady ever. She worked with every top comedian at least once,
Everybody.
yeah. And,
It's true.
even her last appearance, she's with Groucho, it's like, oh my God, what a charmed life she had. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was a sales rep for years and just watching him go through the motions of trying to sell the vacuum cleaner. I wasn't selling vacuum cleaners, but it just has a personal thing for me. And most people don't know about that film. They go, what Little
I
Giant?
love that film.
Yeah.
I love that film. When I was a kid, it was one of my favorites because it would make me cry.
Oh.
It made me cry because he went through such crap in that movie. And he's so good at the pathos. He really is.
Yeah.
I still cry when I watch it. I still cheer up when I watch it.
I'll have to watch it again. But yeah, you talk about
really
he could
good.
be that he would be good as a solo and he was a good actor. I think that does show those two things to his benefit.
You'll see it.
Like I don't even remember when I think about the film, I never even think about what did Bud Abbott do in it. I know he's in it, but I haven't
He actually
watched
plays
it in a
two
while.
roles.
Yeah.
He plays two roles.
Oh, okay.
One is the villain. He plays the villain of the piece, for one thing. And then he plays the nicer cousin of the villain.
Okay.
But the thing about Abbott that I discovered as I was rewatching the films, as I was writing the book, is that he didn't mind showing himself in a villainous light. He was the villain in Jack and the Beanstalk.
Yep.
He was the villain in Mexican Hayride. I mean, right up to the very end of the film, he's trying to get Lou to do something dishonest. He didn't mind putting himself in that position. And, I got it handed to him because that shows a complete lack of ego. It was sort of like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do my best, and that'll be that. So God bless Bud Abbott for doing that. But he is more prominent in their next film, which is also one where they separate, The Time of Their Lives. Which
I like that one a lot too. Yeah. One thing also that I noticed.
They're both great in it.
One thing also I noticed, and I didn't know this until I started reading about them, is like, unlike most other of these comedians we're talking about, they rarely, if ever, played themselves. They're always like, even in Frankenstein, it's Chick and whatever. I forgot.
Wilbur.
Yeah, Wilbur. That's right. And it's like they never played themselves. It's really weird. It's like Ollie was always Ollie, and even if it was Oliver Hardy and Stanley in like Babes in Toyland, it was Ollie D and Stanny Dumb. So it even
And he's
was not
dumb.
even that far. Three Stooges
Or
were always
Stanley
Moe,
O,
Larry, and
Stanley O, and Ollie O.
yeah,
Yeah,
they never
yeah,
veered from the Stooges. It's like they might have nickname, but they were always themselves.
yeah.
And Groucho, even the Marx brothers always. Well, no, that's not true. He had Otis D.
No,
Firefly and all
they
that.
mostly had
Yeah,
the funny
so
names.
that's the only
Yeah.
one that did, and I guess W.C. Fields did to a certain extent, the ones he wrote. But it's like it's just
Yeah.
funny how many comedians didn't bother to change their name. They just did
Some
themselves.
of them. I think that was mostly a Hal Roach thing. Hal
Yeah,
Roach mostly had everyone who was in his movies used their own names, including the supporting players.
yeah,
James C. Morton played James C. Morton. But Abbott and Costello, they were Abbott and Costello in their very first film, One
yeah.
Night in the Tropics.
That's right. And
And
they
then
were
they
on their
were Abbott,
radio show and they were on their TV
right?
show. But
And their TV
but
show.
it's like
But they
if
were
you
also, but you have to understand, their first movie for Universal, they were Bud and Lou, Abbott and Costello. Their
yeah.
last movie for Universal, Meet the Mummy, they were Bud and Lou. In
Okay.
fact, they
I
even
mean, I
used
know
their
they
middle names.
did on
They used their middle
occasion.
names as last
Yeah,
names.
got
Yeah,
it.
Bud
Okay.
Alexander and Lou
Oh.
Francis.
And
Mhm.
then the other funny thing, and I know this annoyed Lou Costello, it's like the catchphrase was, "Hey Abbott," and that used
Hey,
there was two things that always said, it's like he's never Abbott in any of the films, Bud Abbott, and then it's like I'm sure that annoyed. I read, and I don't know if it's like he thought the comedian should have the first billing as much as since he said "Hey Abbott," everybody thought he was Abbott. Just
oh well,
yeah,
no,
that
there's
seems to me more of a logical reason why kids who didn't think about it would come up to him.
right,
Can I have your autograph, Mr. Abbott? More than, oh, the
and that would
comedian should
annoy him.
be first billing because I mean Martin Lewis had Dean
Yeah,
Martin as
yeah.
first billing. So
Well, it was a burlesque tradition
yeah.
that the straight man not only got first billing, but also got 60% of the salary. So
Yeah.
Bud, for the first 5 years or so, got 60%, Lou got 40. So when they were making big money, Lou finally turned around and said, you know what? I work harder than he does. I'm the first one here. I'm the last one out. I want 60%. And, a lot of people fault Lou for that. But, he worked a lot harder than Bud. He did
Yep.
a lot of, you look at the schedules on the films, he was on a lot more days than Bud was. Bud was famous for going, all right, I'm going to go and try and find you a job. You do this over here. And Lou would go over and do 10 minutes with somebody else.
Right.
So I'm sorry. That was very fair to me. Just like Stan and Ollie, Stan made more money than Ollie did, but he did more
because
work.
did Ollie even write anything? I mean, Stanley was always
Well, he
writing
would
scripts and
suggest.
stuff like
He
that.
would
Okay.
suggest.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
But no, he wasn't officially like Stan was getting paid to be an editor and a co-director and a writer and all this stuff. So yeah, he deserved more money, but so did Lou. Lou worked
Yeah.
5 times harder.
Yeah.
And then there's this stupid story about him wanting to change the name to Costello and Abbott, which to me is just it's complete bull.
Yeah.
Nobody in their right minds. You're the top act. You're the top movie personalities in the world at this point, right?
Yeah.
You're going to change the name of the act?
Yeah.
Not even would do something like that.
Yeah. The only case I've ever seen something like that, and it happens to this day, is the Lennon and McCartney credits on Beatles records. When McCartney does a solo album, he always flips it around to McCartney Lennon. And then Yoko gets back by dumping McCartney's name and putting her own. This little infighting on the song credits and stuff like that. But oh well, but yeah, it would be career suicide if Abbott and Costello did that. It's like, what's this Costello and Abbott? That doesn't make sense. And Abbott and Costello flows better. It just really does.
It does.
It's just a nice flowing name.
Mhm.
But it's like, and then even Bud and Lou. Unfortunately, Bud still gets first billing, but it sounds better than Lou and Bud. So it just
And Lou and Bud. It just does.
Yeah.
It just does. But
sorry, Lou.
Yeah.
In your next lifetime, just be a solo. I don't know.
I was showing the wife some of their live work on the Colgate show, and it was very interesting because as we're watching, Bud is like, "Okay, I'm going to go over here and do something, and you do this over here." And again, Lou does 10 minutes by himself.
Yeah, I was
and
watching a
he's
little bit
killing himself.
streaming. Yeah, and he
Already.
was like smacking into the walls and everything. And
Oh, he's
where's
so
Abbott? He
funny.
doesn't
He's
come
so
back for like 20 minutes, and he'll say like one line. It's like, why don't you
funny.
shape yourself up or something like that, and Lou's like drenched in sweat and water and whipped cream and whatever, and there's feathers floating around, and it's like, Bud, you weren't even there. What's going Were you out gambling around the corner, taking a drink or whatever? It's like, what?
Right, exactly. I was drinking.
Yeah.
No, but it's funny watching the live shows, because I mean, I know how sick Lou was,
Mm-hmm.
and when you watch those shows, sometimes you go, "Ooh,
Yeah.
take it easy, take it easy." You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I show my classes. It's Slowly I Turned. It's the Niagara Falls bit,
Right.
but he does it with Errol Flynn.
Oh, I think I've seen that, but yeah, it's been a while.
On the Colgate show.
Yeah.
So Flynn at the end, and they're friends. They'd gone to each other's houses and stuff in real life. But Flynn decides he's going to hurt Lou on the way out. He takes his cowboy boot as he's walking out of the scene. Lou's on the floor, and he steps on his shin with the heel. And you see Lou go. It's horrifying, but it's live television, and he went on. He had to go on, whatever. But he looked like he was constantly getting hurt. He did all the physical stuff. It's just, I don't know. He worked himself to death. He really did.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and as much as you diss Curly, I would say he did too. It's like, even if he had the same shtick over and over, it was.
They worked like crazy when they weren't making those shorts, which only took like 8 weeks out of the year. The rest of the time they were traveling. They were living the hard life of a traveling act. It's not easy, Now,
did Abbott and Costello do that too, or did they need to? Did they do live as well as the movies and the radio, or did they cut back on those other things once the films took off?
Once films started, because they were pretty much full-time employees at Universal, they still would appear at benefits, especially.
Right.
They almost killed themselves, mostly Lou, during a summer cross-country bond selling tour where they sold $85 million worth of war bonds. Do you know how much $85 million is in today's money? It's maybe 200 million, maybe. Maybe more. And whatchamacallit, and the government, paid them back by making examples out of them when they got behind on their taxes.
That's so weird. You'd think they would have cut them a little slack for all the money they raised that way, but
that's what I say. It's like, our wonderful government. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway.
So the moral is pay your taxes, or at least fill out the forms.
Pretend to.
Yeah, fill out the forms. That's gets you off the hook. Anyway,
that's right. I fill out my form.
Very good. Anyway,
sorry about that.
Okay, I wanted to ask you briefly before we go. Your co-author Matthew Coniam. So he's British. That's all I know about. No, you said he was from Bath. How did you get into contact with him? Is it because of the Marx Brothers film, or did you know of him prior to that, or?
I've guested on their podcast about 4 times now, so I got to know all the guys through that page on Facebook, and Matthew and I just started chatting. I was invited onto the podcast, and eventually Matthew asked me to do this book, so we've been connected since then. Mm-hmm. I met him in January in Bath. I went to meet my then fiance, and we had dinner with him and his family, and they're wonderful people. Mm-hmm. Matthew's a very intelligent, wonderful writer, just wonderful. Mm-hmm. There's 2 people I feel very proud that they asked me to partner with them. It's very flattering. One is Matthew Coniam, who's one of my favorite modern day authors, and the other one was Will Ryan, who just made me an equal. And it's to me, he was a incredibly talented man, incredibly intelligent, and he took me on as an equal partner, and cool. I'm very proud of that to this day, and I miss him so much. You have no idea.
Me too. Let's see. But how did Matthew, he probably talks about it in the book, but the book's not out till November. Uh, how did he become an Abbott and Costello fan and even a Marx Brothers fan? It's like, there's nothing wrong with British people liking American stuff, but a lot of times
Oh yeah.
they like their own stuff. So that, they would be talking about, Monty Python or whatever, not American
Yeah.
comedians.
Yeah.
What was the appeal, or even George Formby or something like that? What's the appeal of like, I guess on Laurel and Hardy, Laurel was British and Charlie Chaplin was British. So,
British.
there's a connection
British.
there. But I mean,
Yeah.
what was the appeal of Abbott and Costello? They're kind of, loudmouth New Yorkers, the cliche loudmouth New Yorkers. So were the Stooges and even the Marx Brothers to a certain extent, So it's like,
New Yorkers. Yeah.
what's his fascination with it?
Well, British comedy. First of all, I'm a student of that as well. When I got so sick of American comedy, I suddenly found out that there was a parallel universe going on across the pond, and they spoke English.
Yes.
So I got into it. I got into Arthur Askey and Flanagan and Allen and the Crazy Gang, and you name it. I can go on and on. But they were the comedians themselves were fans of when Abbott and Costello came to England to play the Palladium in 1950. People came to pay their respects. All the comedians came back to pay their respects because they stole from them. Flanagan and Allen used to do Abbott and Costello bits in their acts. Morecambe and Wise, one of my favorite comedy teams from England, they were Abbott and Costello for the first 15 years of their act. They actually just imitated what Abbott and Costello did. So they were very popular. Double acts were very popular in England. We call them front of the curtain, acts. And Abbott and Costello killed when they went to the Palladium. They just killed. So yeah, they were very popular. The Marx Brothers were popular. Groucho went over to do a television show after You Bet Your Life. He went to England to do a show. Spike Milligan, who I think is one of the handful of true comic geniuses, he loved the Marx Brothers. He loved them. Big inspiration. So yeah, no, the British really do appreciate. They love the Three Stooges. My wife told me her and her little brother grew up watching the Three Stooges on television in England. So
I know they like Phil Silvers of all things.
They love Phil Silvers.
That baffled me. I know he's in one of the Carry On pictures, but still, it's like
what it is. It's Bilko. It's the Bilko show.
Yeah,
but
there's more devotion to it over there than here, which is really strange.
They love it.
Yeah, because here unless you're like, you grew up when we did, it's like if you mention Bilko or Phil Silvers, most people now they go, who, what? I mean, I have a friend of mine named Lee who loves Phil Silvers, and he got me into him more than I originally knew, because when I grew up, I sound like I'm so much younger. I'm not that much younger, but when I grew up, there's very little black and white television. They would show some movies in black and white, but it's like, other than I Love Lucy and maybe like Honeymooners or something like that, not much black and white shows. So if it was a show that had like Gilligan's Island, I would say this is like 2 seasons were in color, one's in black and white. It took me years to see the black and white ones because they never played them. Never saw black and white Bewitched or I Dream of Jeannie or any of that stuff, because color is great in black and white verboten, and it's like, oh geez, show it. But they would show Three Stooges and they would show Little Rascals, so they did show that black and white, but for some reason they didn't.
You want to hear something interesting? When you talk about England, they love the Three Stooges. They used to show the Three Stooges. They don't know who our gang. They don't know what that is. Our gang.
Interesting.
It just didn't resonate with the British kids. Isn't that something?
And I guess that makes sense. It's like
in a way.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a very American thing, kind of a rural thing. Maybe somebody who wasn't if you grew up in London, it probably couldn't identify at all. But if you grew up out in maybe like north of England, maybe you could kind of figure it out. But it's still very vastly different. And I guess that's the case. It's like as much as I say, oh, Abbott and Costello is such a New York thing. I mean, I guess New York and London, I've never been to London, are similar in certain respects. Big city and hustle.
It's very similar.
Yeah,
it's very similar.
Okay.
The buildings are older in England. That's about it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a city. It's like
so one of these days I'll get there, but I did go to New York at least, so it's so
yeah. See, at least you got there.
Yeah, but I've always noticed this and you could probably agree with me. Is like growing up, it seemed like all comedy was based out of New York, and now it's pretty much all based out of Hollywood, at least for the United States. It's like, and because when we were kids, all the comic book publishers are out of New York. Mad Magazine was out of New York. Saturday Night Live is about the only thing left that's still out of New York, but like everything else, all the networks did things live out of New York, and then they'd get the kinescopes out here and stuff like that. So
right.
It was very New York centrified, society.
It was the cultural hub of the nation was New York. You had even like say your show of shows was broadcast out of New York. A lot of the Colgate comedy hours were broadcast out of New York. Ed Sullivan was broadcast out of New York. The early days, New York was probably more important than Hollywood when it came to television. Right. Ed Wynn actually had the first Los Angeles-based television comedy show, variety show. But New York, it just seems like there's a lot of attitude there. Yeah. You have to be sharp to survive in a place like that. And that inspires comedy. That just inspires comedy. Some of the funniest people I know have come out of New York. But, the guy I consider the funniest talking comedian of all time was from Philadelphia. So,
which is who?
I don't want to say.
Oh, W.C. Fields. Okay.
The funniest man, I think the funniest talking comedian of all time.
We haven't even talked about him all that much, but yeah. But I learned to love his films too. It was nice. One thing I love about DVDs is that they finally did big collections on a lot of these comedians, and you could finally just get them for like a song instead of because I think they started off even on DVDs saying, oh, let's put out Buck Privates, keeping with Abbott and Costello in the Navy, and they had separate DVDs for every one of them. And then they said somewhere along the line, some brilliant person at Universal said, this is insane, we got like 40 films or something. It was like whatever. I don't know how many you said. How many were at Universal? Like 30 or something like that?
No, 36.
36.
Wait. No. Less than that. Sorry. They made 3 for MGM. 3 for MGM, 2 for Warner Brothers, 1 for Eagle Lion, 1 for Nassar. I'm gonna say 8 independent, 8 films away from Universal, so probably 28 films.
28 films. Okay, but still, when they finally put together those DVD collections, where they clumped a bunch of these films together, like an old TV show, it's like, now I can see this stuff, and I guess in a certain way that they were kind of like a TV show, even though they did eventually do a TV show, it's like, And
well, to me, it's like I just got off Amazon actually before I was with you here, and I was looking at the W.C. Fields Blu-rays that are coming out, and they're releasing them one by one, and I'm very hesitant to buy them because then I know the second I press that buy button, they're going to release a collection. And that's what I want is a collection.
And like Marx Brothers, they did do a collection, at least the first 5.
Thank goodness.
And they had extra footage, so it's one of the few. I'm not big on buying Blu-rays necessarily unless I'm going to get something else, and it's not and there's like extra footage. Okay, I'm in. If there's a few,
I like extras. I'm one of those guys.
There's a few commentaries and it's something new, I'll do it. But otherwise, I have a friend who's like total Blu-ray, and it's like, I can't just buy Blu-ray on principle. It's like, I buy the cheaper format because, my blind eyes can't see much difference between DVD and Blu-ray and 4K unless they really say, we went back to the original masters and we meticulously cleaned it up and stuff like that. Okay. Then I'll get it, and so, I did get that, Marx Brothers.
There's some I'll get, I'll see an example of what they've done, like say Mystery of the Wack Museum. or Dr. X from the Warner's collection.
Mhm.
Some of the most beautiful restoration work I've ever seen.
Hmm.
I would have paid twice what I paid for it.
Hmm.
But I'm an extras person. I love extras.
Yeah,
I like
me
the
too.
documentaries that come with it. I love a good commentary. Have to plug Michael Schlesinger, by the way, because I think he's the best
Yes,
at
yes, I'll
commentaries.
agree.
Incredible, just incredible. But that's why I buy either a DVD or a Blu-ray. I like the extras.
Mhm.
I have good copies of all the movies. I have every W.C. Fields movie looking beautiful. I
Yeah,
don't need them on Blu-ray. I
right.
want the extras.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're on the same
yeah.
wavelength. Do you have, because I don't have this, Jerry Beck, right?
Oh,
Animation
sure,
historian.
very
Okay.
well.
Okay. I figured probably had
Yeah,
some
he's my
crossover.
buddy.
Yeah.
He's a,
Anyway,
he's
he
a
he
buddy.
he appeared once on Stu's show promoting the Abbott and Costello TV show on Blu-ray. So I don't have that
Yeah.
because I'm like you, it's not my favorite, but do you have it on
Mhm.
Blu-ray anyway? Or
I
did you
have
not?
the first season
Okay.
on Blu-ray. I bought that collection. No, I didn't buy that collection. Somebody actually gave it to me as a
Oh,
gift.
okay. I was wondering if it's
And
worth
I'm
getting.
and I'm
That's
not
really,
sure I would have bought it.
okay.
Yeah. No, no, they did a great job. It's absolutely gorgeous and it
Okay.
sounds amazing. And some of the extras are great. And here's the best extra is the fact that they have uh, complete shows without the laugh track.
Oh,
And they're a
okay.
hundred and they're 100 times better. So, it's what I always complained about with that show. To me, it always sounds like they recorded an audience at like a bowling alley or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the second season's even worse.
Mm.
But no, I did want the first season in
Okay.
Blu-ray because
Okay.
the first season's a lot of fun. It really
Okay.
is a lot of
I
fun.
might invest in it. I was just kind of curious about if it was worth rebuying it, but for that reason, it sounds good if there's extras and
Yeah.
stuff. But
Bob
what struck
Furmanek did a great job. Great
wh-
job.
what struck me on the Abbott and
Oh,
Costello TV show.
watch it.
What
Look, you're gonna
struck?
fuck.
What?
No offense, you know what I mean? No offense. Okay, sorry.
We'll leave it on that. No, the ANC show. I'll say it that way. How about that? Uh, the,
Yeah.
I never saw the show growing up ever. The first time I saw it was on DVD. I knew of it,
Really?
but I never saw
Hmm.
any of them. So people were
Oh,
talking
I
about
grew up on it.
how the seasons were different. I think again, it's an East Coast thing. They did have some shows out here, but they didn't kind of I'm all the way on the West Coast, and it's like,
Yeah.
it was the black and white thing, and it's like they aired occasionally, but I wasn't that much of a rabid fan then to want to see him. I figured I might have seen clips of it, and it's probably the same. Come on, Lou, let's go get a job or something. And it's like, okay,
We gotta
it's
get
like
you a
that. And
job.
it's like I'd see 5 minutes and then I have to go off to school or something. And it's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So I probably saw
Mhm.
some of it, but I didn't sit there and watch all, what is there, 52 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was what? Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
But the one that struck me as really interesting as a person was Sid Fields, the bald guy, and it's like, I go,
He's
I like
amazing.
him.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
I
And I
love him. Are
go,
you kidding?
that's,
He
that's,
goes back to he goes back to burlesque.
yeah.
That's where they first knew each other.
Yeah.
But then Eddie Cantor signed him to a personal contract
Hmm.
and had him on his radio show as a character called Mr. Guffey.
Hmm.
And he even appeared in Cantor's last movie for Goldwyn. It's
Hmm.
called Strike Me Pink. And
Hmm.
Sid Fields has a part in that. That's like 1936. So what Sid Fields would do, Mr. Guffey, was that character. Oh, so now you're saying my wife shouldn't double up, that horribly impossible person
Yeah.
who does nothing but fight you. He eventually did that for Abbott and Costello. So he was signed on by Abbott and Costello to write the radio show and appear on it, as that character, basically.
Yeah.
Usually Melonhead, isn't it? And so, yeah, he was associated with them long before the TV show.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best things about the TV show.
Yeah.
I think.
And he's
Anyway.
on some of the
But
Colgate
you want to hear
ones.
something interesting?
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Oh, one more thing before we get off Sid Fields. There is a recording. Bud Abbott was too ill to appear on a radio show with Lou.
Hmm.
And Lou and Sid Fields do Who's on First.
Wow.
And it's not very good. It's not very good.
Interesting. But Sid also appears on some of the Colgate ones. I've seen that too. So
Yes, yeah. I was watching him today. Yeah.
I just like his.
Your
I like
head
his
is coming through your hair.
I like his voice. And I know a lot of this is vaudevillian type delivery. You have to project.
Yes.
I want to get the rent from you. That type of stuff. It's like nobody talks like that. It's like, why you
true.
guys? You're ruining my house. Or whatever. I don't have lines memorized.
Oh, it's funny. He's funny, Mr. Fields.
So that was the thing that really struck me when I saw it. So I said, I like the TV show. It's not perfect, but I get the purpose. If the purpose was that Costello wanted to get like pristine prints of them doing their old bits one more time,
doing their routine. So and also sure. there was a more practical reason. Also, he also felt that he owned the show. Bud worked for him during this time.
Oh, okay.
And he was hoping that if he put these routines on film, on a show where he owned, he would own those bits as well. So he was kind of hoping that that's what it would be. Unfortunately, those bits were like public domain. There was only one where they had trouble. One got them into trouble, and that was when they were doing a movie called In Society. And right in the middle of the shoot, Lou went up to was it Charlie Lamont? I think it was Charlie Lamont, the director, and said, "I want to do Flugel Street." And he's like, "What are you talking about? We're doing a movie here. You can't just have, I want to do Flugel Street." So they contrived a thing where they did Flugel Street. Now they changed the name to Bagel Street for this one. And that was because a comedian by the name of Joey Fay claimed to have written that sketch and claimed ownership. He had a copyright on it. He sued Universal and actually got a payment out of them. I don't know how much it was, but yeah, he sued them just because Lou had an urge to do that old burlesque bit that Joey Fay claimed to own. So that was the only time they got in trouble.
Very cool. Okay, well, I could talk to you for hours, and
probably
would, but it's already been well over an hour. Let's save it up for another time. But usually, the way these shows wrap up is, plug anything you want to plug. If you want to plug the book, if you want to plug your courses, if you want to plug anything else, hair plugs.
I'd actually
whatever.
like to unplug my bathtub, if you don't mind. It's about to overflow.
And how people can get in contact you, and things like that. So. You have the floor.
Well, it's a business. The whole no hitting. Okay. So sorry, I just had a Jerry moment. I'm geriatric. So let me think. What can I plug? The book, of course, is coming out supposedly November 5th. That's the street date. We are number one in pre-orders and interest in a book coming out this year about comedians. Which we're very happy about. I am teaching classes for a company called OLLI, the Osher Life Learning Institute. What else? What else am I doing? Matthew and I are working on a new book, but I can't talk about it yet. That's for the future. And
can you at least say, is it about comedy? About comedy?
It's about comedy.
Okay,
and it's another annotated thing. Yeah.
Very good. I'll leave it at that.
I can tell you private.
Okay.
And what else? Am I doing anything else? I am appearing at the Columbus Moving Picture Show at the end of the month. In fact, on the 27th, Friday the 27th at 2:00, I'm doing a seminar about Abbott and Costello, showing clips and talking about them, taking questions. I'm introducing Hold That Ghost, and I will be introducing with Michael Schlesinger, Biffle and Schuster in Bride of Finkelstein. So That's what I got.
Very cool. All right.
Thank you. And I just got married.
Yay!
A month ago. And look, I'm still happy.
Very good.
Yeah.
Ooh, 3D.
So,
3D Stooges. Yeah, wise guy.
Yeah, right. It's got to float like that.
Right.
That's what it's got to do. Oh God! Only fans know that. Only fans know about the.
Why do I know this?
But anyway,
why? I wasted my life just so I could do a podcast today. Anyway, all
Hey,
right.
buddy, invite me again. I'd
All
love to
right.
come back.
Very good. And it was a pleasure having you as a guest today, Nick, on the Fun
Thank you.
Ideas podcast. And we'll see
Thank
you
you.
next time.